TikTok is China's revenge for the 1840 Opium War, and today I want to share why everyday people like you and me are suffering as a result. So our school system in the UK never taught us that actually way back in the 19th century, 10% of the Chinese population was addicted to opium. And the British were the ones that were selling it to them. So there was a bunch of British merchants, well, let's just call it what it is, drug cartels, that were selling all this opium to China. And China was like, please stop. Like, so many of our people are getting addicted to this. And so the Chinese police started, confiscating the opium and sending the merchants back. And so many members of the British Parliament had invested in these companies and were making money off the back of the stocks that they had in these opium cartels that they actually convinced the empire to launch a war against China. And Britain was way more militarily advanced than China at the time. They had all this technology and they just ran over the top of the Chinese. And they said, look, stop interfering with us selling opium. And so they just kept selling these drugs that wrecked the lives of millions of people, crippled China economically, ruined families, blah, 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 blah. And if you know anything about the Chinese, you'll know that they are incredibly strategic and they've got very, very long memories. There's a famous apocryphal story of, a leader from China being asked recently, what do you think about the French Revolution? And sat there for a while and thought about it. And the answer was, it's a little bit too soon to tell. This was 200 or 300 years after the event. And the way leadership works in China is they do think intergenerationally. They do think about the long term. They're prepared to make sacrifices in the now for the benefit of the future. And so now we're in a situation, fast forward, a couple of 100 years later, the average person in Britain spends 2 hours a day on TikTok. This modern day, highly addictive substance that is actually damaging the British economy a lot more than people maybe would think. So we all know that, people are addicted to screens. We all know it's messing up their dopamine systems. We all know it's hurting their ability to focus. But the scale of this is actually huge. You think 2 hours per day, that's, half of the UK population doing that. You have young kids who are spending even more time on TikTok. I'm talking 3-4 hours per day. And what most people aren't aware of is that there's actually 2 different versions of the app. There's 2 different versions of TikTok. There's one that's shown in the West and there's one that's shown in China. And the algorithms work very, very differently on both. On the Western version, the UK and the US version, things that go viral are things like pranks. They're things like, anything to do with sex. We'll put it very kind of broadly like that. Anything provocative, people messing around, people being goofy, just things that are kind of debasing society. And you might think that's a judgmental statement, but I don't care. It's true. Things that are kind of making us worse rather than making us better. Polluting the minds of young people, getting them to look at the wrong types of heroes, getting them to, not have positive role models, and they want to be TikTokers, they want to be YouTubers, and they don't want to study because they want to become, an influencer and all this sort of nonsense. Meanwhile, in China, the things that go viral on the Chinese version of TikTok are things like scientific discoveries, engineering, innovation, young people who are doing incredible things in the domains of sport or science or academia. They have literally designed the app to make it a positive hero-making machine so that the young minds in the future of China will look at these things. Those are the aspirations, whereas in the West, it's all about distraction and it's all about making people less productive. And the toll that is currently having on our economy, you look at colleges and universities today, people can't even focus on lectures anymore. Meanwhile, in China, they're dialed in. And the future of warfare is economic. We already have experienced that over COVID. We've experienced that, in today's day and age. You could argue warfare's always been economic. Go back to the Opium War. It was always about money. Because Britain was more militarily advanced than China, they could control them, they could dominate them. So I want you to start thinking of lack of ability to focus as a new type of military weapon. And also, we don't have to be pawns in this military chess game that's being played between the US and China. You know, we don't have to have our attention suffer. We don't have to have the focus of our young people being eroded before our very eyes. There actually is a better way. We can step outside of the circus. It's a little bit countercultural because these things have become, you know, the air that we breathe. And to be fair, I've got nothing necessarily against China in a broad sense. But our Western social media companies aren't much better. Like, they're doing the same thing to us. You can almost expect and understand like a foreign adversary trying to get an advantage on a population, but this is like a form of treason where these people, they're solely driven by greed. Like, Facebook has been told time and time again, if they want to make the world a better place, they need to actually stop growing so much. They need to change their algorithms that make people addicted. And time again, they've just said no. Like, I was reading a report the other day, and Zuckerberg, literally, this is leaked internal documents, literally told them, don't bring me a report like this again. I don't want to use the company for social good. Essentially what he's saying is, this is a business, we're here to make money. And that type of internal warfare, you know, that act of treason where essentially now, because governments are allowing these organizations to keep going, it's like the weapons being turned inward against ourselves. It's like the gun of attention hijacking is held against our own citizens. And so it's time for us to fight back. It's time for us to fight back against big tech. And one of the ways I advocate for that is just to kick big tech out of your house. Don't let them through your door. Don't let them into your kids' bedrooms. Don't let them into your bedroom. Don't let them get in the way between you and your wife at nighttime when you should be sleeping or doing all sorts of other stuff. There's a really simple method of turning your home into a screen-free home. It's how I've been able to be sober from screen addictions for the last 10 years. And I was way more addicted than I guarantee you will ever be. I had like a decade-long addiction to pornography starting at age 10, 20,000 hours of video games clocked in before I was 20, and even a suicide attempt because of screen addictions. I've spent 10 years trying to figure out a system how we could escape this big tech madness that's happening to us, whether it's China or US or some other cool random startup that comes along to try to steal our attention and our focus. And so I've put together a 4-week digital detox. It's totally free. It's right here on YouTube. I'll put a link to it below. But yeah, step out of the circus. Don't be a pawn in some big government military chess game. Set yourself free from the modern day opium. And get you and your family like safe from these apps. That's it. Cheers.